Hello, everyone. How are you today? Welcome to Ask Venus. The goddess is here. I didn't actually come up with that name, that title of the show, but I thought it was really funny because it actually triggered some stuff for me. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So let's go for it. Just because I think we've all been taught that if you do stuff like that, that somehow that's egotistical or somehow that's bad and wrong, right? And in a way, based on our topic today, that's putting yourself first. It's Sarah Grandinetti last year did an Ego Island class, and it really was such a cool invitation to start owning what we're great at, start owning our gifts and capacities. And I just want to say thank you so much for those of you who are here already. It's great to see you. And so, how do you put yourself first? The age-old question. And please feel free to comment, ask questions. This is your time. So asking Venus at any time while we're talking is great. Hello. And if it's okay. You can totally do Facebook user, but if you give Facebook permission, they will tell you who it is. You could also say, hello, Venus, this is blah, blah, blah. I'd love to say hi to you. Give Facebook permission. There we go. Vinny. Welcome. Yeah, so how do you put yourself first? Thank you so much for those of you who answered the question. Like, do you believe that you're wrong if you put yourself first? I think a lot of us are taught that way, like it's selfish to put yourself first. You should always put others first. But one of the things that I've learned and I know is it's really difficult to fill up other people's tanks when your tank is empty. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're totally depleted and you haven't done anything for yourself, then how do you expect to take care of others, right? It's that putting a oxygen mask on in the airplane, right? They say put yours on first so you don't pass out before you put your kids on, right? And I wonder how many of us have actually had the chance to test that, right? Like how many of us have had a chance, hi Joseph, welcome, to test the oxygen mask theory. Like let's say you're in an emergency situation. What do you actually believe you would do? Would you put on your own mask first? Or would you put on somebody else's, especially if you had like a child, right? And since we've never been put in that situation, it's kind of hard to say, what would we do? But we do it every day, all the time. But we do it in little ways. Like, let's say you're feeling hungry and your body is wanting some sort of specific kind of food. And the person that you're with wants to eat a different kind of food. How many times do you go with what they want instead of asking for and getting what you want? And that's just a little thing, but it's so minor, but it's actually not that minor. Because if you can start to speak up for the things that you desire as far as things to eat, right? Maybe that's just a small step in the direction of putting yourself first. It's the acknowledgement of, hey, I'd actually like to do this, or the acknowledgement of, hey, I'd like to go here, or it doesn't mean the other person has to give up what they want. So a great example, Sarah Grandinetti was telling me about her kids, and sometimes they'll all want to go out to eat, and they'll all want different food. One will want whatever, Carl's Jr., and one will want McDonald's, right? So what do? They honor everybody's choice, and they go to all of the different drive-thrus. How many of us have done something like that? Like, wow, okay, we could all have it. We could all have what we desire. So I think that that's the other misconception, is a lot of people think that if I get what I want, then somebody else is not going to get what they want. And if somebody else gets what they want, I won't get what I want. What if we can all get what we want and put ourselves first? What if it's possible for everybody to be first and that there's not a loser? So everywhere where you bought the lie that there was a loser, if there was a winner, or there was somebody who was first, there was somebody who was last, would you let that go? Awesome. And please feel free to chime in if you've got any questions. I've got you on two different two different streams so that I can see your questions better. So yeah. And what if you really aren't wrong for putting yourself first? And putting yourself first, you give other people permission to do the same. Like, have you ever noticed, like, if one person speaks up for where they want to go eat, you're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal for me to actually speak up for what I want to eat. And what if you could be the leader and show everybody that it's possible? Cool. So I'm going to pause for a minute because this is Ask Venus. So go ahead and chime in. You got any questions for me? We had a great dialogue going on in the thread with the question. And some people said yes, they would like that they did make themselves wrong for putting themselves first. And other people were like, no, I don't. And some of us have learned not to, right? I know I definitely had to learn that one. And I just got a notification. Somebody said they were trying to ask a question, but they're having troubles. Well, I can bring, cool. So, I will pause. I will wait. My tendency is want to keep talking, but I'm just going to wait and see if you guys have any questions out there. Cool. So Joseph asks, how can I put myself first? Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, so, which is the name of our broadcast, and not be selfish or self-absorbed is what Joseph says. Thank you for that clarification. Cool. Well, first of all, okay, so where did you learn for it to be selfish to put yourself first? Was it your parents? Was it religion? Was it, right? Something. Hi, Chelsea. Everyone. So everyone tells you okay, it's selfish. Is that actually true? Does everyone tell you it's selfish? I'm gonna gamble that it's probably religion or parents. Most of us have it, right? So, right. Cool. So Joseph says it's no, I don't. So I don't actually tell him it's selfish. Cool. Okay, so first of all, everywhere where any of us have bought that it was selfish from our parents, teachers, peers, religion, all of that, would you let it all go? Cool, awesome. Now, if you were the choosing one, what would you choose? And this is a great home play, guys, and something to play with throughout the week, is if you were the choosing one, what would you choose? And ask it before you choose anything. If I was the choosing one here, what would I choose? If I was the choosing one here, what movie would I go to? If I was the choosing one here, what food would I eat? If I was the choosing one here, what kind of exercise would I want to do? Right? But it's a practice. I'm going to tell you guys first and foremost, I did not get this overnight. I definitely had to work at it. And I had to keep asking, what is fun for me? And what would I like to choose? Not based on what anybody else is choosing, but what am I choosing? And then slowly but surely, it started to come out. And I started to like, oh, okay, I'd like to do that, right? And it might even be little steps at a time, right? But not, and then big steps, right? They get bigger and all the time. So cool. So I hope that helps Joseph a little bit. He also had a question. He says, when I get in a grumpy space, how do I interact with my partner and family? Or do I not just have grumpy spaces? Well, I still get grumpy, for sure. And I think we all do, right? We all have days that we wake up feeling like an elephant slept on our head. But this is actually another really great point to putting yourself first, because putting yourself first is also not making yourself wrong. It's not judging you. It's not making yourself wrong. For any choice that you choose, whether you wake up grumpy or not, right? So, and then it's also an acknowledgement, right? So how many times do you get grumpy with somebody or something's going on, right? And the minute you say, I'm just feeling grumpy today, it dissipates. Is it just an acknowledgement and an allowance of it being present in your life? But I'm going to teach you guys a little trick today. So whatever you resist persists. So if you're concerned about being grumpy and you're resisting being grumpy and you're making yourself wrong for being grumpy, then guess what? You're going to be more grumpy. But when you stop resisting it, you stop pushing against it, you stop having that energy that holds it in place, that keeps it stuck. And then there's just this allowance. Like if you stop resisting something, it can just go right by. The energy just flows through, right? And a little trick from Access Consciousness is, who does this belong to? If you're grumpy, please ask, who does this belong to? Because 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are not yours. So that's another way you can put yourself first, is by really getting clear, like, is this even mine? And if this isn't mine, then letting it go so that you can actually be you, right? I'm going to tell you something here, and I know some of you are going to probably take it a little, really literally, and then make yourselves wrong when you're not this. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, if you're not being ease, joy, and glory, you're not being you. That's who you innately are. So if there's some energy that's coming up in your world, is it yours? What is it? What do you do with it? Can you change it? Great questions to ask. If anything is coming up in your life. And guys, I really want you guys to get this, is like the more that you are in those sorts of questions and the more that you're taking the time to listen to what's true for you, that's putting yourself first. That's being like, okay, this is going on right now. You can honor yourself and just be like, oh, I'm grumpy today. Or, Joseph says, is it not making it significant? Is it another way to put yourself first? Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, because you're not making it real and true. And the more you you take something that's happening and you define it and you make it mean something, then you have that energy that keeps getting stuck because there's this significance and this points of view about it and judgments, right? But again, if there's no judgments, no resistance to it, that energy can just flow. It can just be there. You can just be like, oh, okay, I'm grumpy right now. And that acknowledgement, guys, the more you acknowledge, like, hey, that's just what's up in my world right now. It's not right or wrong, good or bad, but it's like, it's just what's up. Then it will flow so much faster. It'll mean so much less. And you probably won't blame anybody else for it because you just allowed it to be. Okay, I woke up with an elephant on my head, or I woke up feeling groggy, or, I had this, I think it was yesterday actually, because yesterday is like family day, Sunday's family day. So we usually do fun stuff as a family. And man, did I ever want to just be alone yesterday, right? And so, but I knew that I could do both, right? But part of it was the acknowledgement of like, hey, I don't actually really want to hang out with people right now. I just had to acknowledge that. I didn't even acknowledge it to them necessarily. I just acknowledged it to myself. Like, oh, I actually really not like to be around people right now. And then I was okay being around people for a little while until I wasn't. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go study, or I'm going to go do what I'm going to do. But I didn't make that wrong either, right? There was this progression of, okay, I don't want to be around people. That's putting myself first. And then sometimes we still choose to be around people. But if you acknowledge these things to yourself, you'll find they will stick you a lot less. You won't feel like you owe somebody something. And I think that that's where we go. We go to, I said it was family day, so I have to go spend time with these people. Do you? Is that a question? Just because you said you have to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here. I apparently like limbs. So if yep. So acknowledging my feelings is another way to put myself first. Wow, that's great. Yes. Yes. And like I said, you don't have to necessarily acknowledge them to other people, because most people, truthfully, guys, won't get it. But you know what? You only need to put yourself first for you. You don't need to put yourself first for anybody else. This isn't so they get that you're putting yourself first. This is so you get that you're putting yourself first. So what can you acknowledge for you? What can you change and choose for you? Right? And And there's something here, because a lot of people too also believe that if you say you are going to do something, I think this is where it gets really cattywampus, because this is like, and yes, that's a word, I'm sure of it, is when you tell somebody you're going to do something, there becomes this, you have to do that because you said you're going to do it. That's like what people say is honoring your word. And I'm going to tell you something a little bit different. Honoring your word is actually not necessarily that. Honoring your word would be, I said I was going to do this and something changed. Can we change it? That's also honoring your word. Honoring your word doesn't mean you do it no matter what because you said you'd do it. That's not honoring your word. Honoring your word is just saying, I know I said I'd do this, and then something is different now, or I don't feel well, or you don't need an excuse. You can just say, something's changed. Would it be okay if we move this to another time? And most people won't have a point of view about that. You're the one that has the point of view that if you speak up and say, oh, I know I said I'd do this, and now I have to do it. You don't. You get to choose you all the time. And Access Consciousness, Gary and Dane encourage us to live in 10-second increments, which means things change every 10 seconds. You can change your mind. It's okay to change your mind. So everywhere where you bought the lie that it's not okay to change your mind, and that was one of those places where you put everybody else first, would you let that go? Awesome. So now, what would you like to choose? And if you woke up today and you had a plan to do something, and that plan isn't light for you anymore, it's not fun for you, you just don't have that energy, then it's okay to change it. And just choose something different. What would be fun for me? What would you like to acknowledge about you? What could you acknowledge that you've never acknowledged? Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Is there anybody else who has any other questions about putting yourself first or anything really? I'm here. What would you like to know about? Well, Joseph says sex, but I don't know exactly what the question is. Cool. Anybody else have any other questions about how to put yourself first? How does putting yourself first in relationship work? What do you mean? I thought we just talked about that. Can you elaborate, Joseph? And family. Cool. I'm not quite sure he's... Oh, okay. How does putting yourself first in relationship, being a parent, how does that work? Great question. So, do you want your kid to have everything in their life that they ever wanted? I'm going to guess yes. Pretty sure you're going to say yes. Yes. Okay, cool. So, do you also believe that you are the person? That you are the source for that? Oh, okay. So everywhere where you believe that you're the source for your kids' happiness, would you let that go? Great. Cool. So, what moral obligations do you all have to people? We're just going to go general right now, because this could be romantic relationships, this could be children, parents, right? This could be siblings, this could be friends, right? So, but all of the moral obligations that you feel that you have, that to making sure that everybody else is happy except for you, would you let that go? Awesome. Thank you. Now, the moral obligations that you have to other people is things that you've contrived and created, thinking that that was what your job was here to do on the planet. And I'm going to let you know a little secret. Your only job on this planet is to make yourself happy. Your only job. I know. You're like, what? Your only job is to make yourself happy. To find happiness, to find joy, to be you, right? But when you're being you, you're happy. You don't have to. You're very welcome. You don't have to take care of anybody else. Now, if you want to contribute to other people, it's different, because you're contributing to them with a full tank. You're contributing to them from the acknowledgement and the honoring of you, right? That's a great question. There we go. If I let that go, what would my job be then? I think I just answered that, but it's to be happy, right? And to do whatever that is that makes you happy. If everybody on the planet was doing what made them happy, we would live on a very different planet. And just think about when you see somebody doing something that they love, or when they're happy and they're in their joy, and how much that actually fuels you and excites you and makes you happy, right? You love to see other people happy. And so, sure, sometimes you probably might wake up grumpy and be like, why are you so happy? Sure, we all have those days too. But for the most part, you're happy when people are happy. You are inspired by people who are happy. Are you inspired by people who are grumpy all the time? Probably not as much. But maybe you're inspired to be more grumpy. Sorry, my sense of humor. You're welcome. No extra charge. Oh, I love your questions. Thank you, guys. Cool. Can you talk about contribution versus taking care of someone else? Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, think about it this way. Kind of the tank scenario. Most of us feel like we have to take care of someone because it's a job or an obligation, or, let's even just think about, like, if you're older and you have parents that are elderly, right? There's this kind of like, oh, well, when they get older, it's my job to take care of them because when I was a kid, they took care of me, right? Possibly. You still have choice. I really want to emphasize this choice thing. And I know, guys, this isn't going to land in everybody's court. They're not going to be like, yeah, that was, I really liked that, what she said. But the truth is, even if you had kids, you could choose whether you wanted to raise them or not. You can also choose whether you want to take care of your parents or not. But when you see it as a choice, that's contribution. When you feel like you should, or you have to, or that you're supposed to, that's taken care of. That's right. So you guys get the difference? When you get to choose what you want to do, you're contributing, but not because you have to, or you think you should, or it's the right thing to do. Does that make sense? Cool. So everywhere where you think that it is your job to take care of everybody and not take care of you, would you just join and create it and let it go? Awesome. Cool. Any other questions? That was a great question. Thank you. Cool. How can you be in a romantic relationship with someone? I will show it. And still live in choice, not as an obligation. What is a way to do it yourself? Well, the first thing I would ask is, what works for me? Like, what's like in relationship? And that, I mean, trust me, I kissed a lot of frogs looking for a prince, and not one of the frogs turned into a prince. So, but I had all of these points of view about what a relationship should and shouldn't be, what's the right way to do it, the roles, kind of the things that Joseph and I talked about a little bit, like these roles. That's awesome. So it's asking yourself, what would work for me? And then that's putting yourself first, because only choosing that which would create greater in your life. So I had a lot of relationships. I've done a ton of work and studies in different areas, and lots of relationship studies, and studying about men and women and how they're all wired. And trust me, I have a wealth of information. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for every single relationship I had, because they all showed me what I didn't want. And then I started to get clear on what it is that I did want and what would work for me, right? And then I could choose something that would create greater in my life. So before I even chose Joseph, my demand of me and my request of the universe was that it be a relationship or partnership, creationship, however you want to say it, that created greater in my life, not took away from my life, or had me cut myself off, or make me diminish myself. And there are still times that I have to speak up and go, you know what? I was cutting myself off there. I was trying to go along with what I thought you wanted me to do. But it was the acknowledgement again. First to myself, then to him, and then we could choose something different. So I would honestly say, for me, it's being willing to also always be in dialogue, always be willing to talk about it, always be willing to say, hey, you know what, this doesn't work for me. I was very clear that I knew from past experience that I couldn't be with somebody who was addicted to drugs and alcohol. Now, that's not wrong. Drugs and alcohol are not wrong. But I know for me, I couldn't do it. So an honoring of me was being with somebody who did not have one of those sorts of things. And then honoring of them, if that's what they want to choose, great, then this probably isn't the partnership for us. That's honoring both sides. That's putting yourselves first, because you have to let them choose what works for them, and you choose what works for you. But it doesn't mean that allowance doesn't mean that suddenly you're a doormat and everybody can run over you. So I think we'll do allowance another day, but it is definitely part of this whole conversation about relationships, creationships, partnerships, friendships, everything. We have so many, right? And they can all be greater than you ever imagined. But first, it has to begin with you. And just like our first episode, what if you are the one that you've been looking for? And then everything else is just a bonus. Well, I absolutely adore you guys. Thank you so much for your questions. I hope it contributed, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Feel free to comment and let me know if there's a specific topic that you'd like us to cover. I'm happy to talk about anything. Have a great day.